Zethor 9, a long-forgotten planet on the outskirts of the Virexia galaxy, had become a condemned outpost. Its inhospitable surfaces were constantly battered by magnetic storms. In the sky, flashes of purple light illuminated the rocky deserts, while clouds of toxic dust enveloped the world in perpetual twilight. Yet the true threat was not on the surface but deep beneath Zethor. Under the planet's soil, Xilium, a rare and powerful resource, fueled distant wars and corporate interests. But hidden in the mines of Zethor 9 was something far more dangerous and terrifying, something that should never have been awakened. Captain Darius Thorne, a veteran of intergalactic military campaigns, had survived countless conflicts in distant systems. But upon arriving at Zethor 9, he knew he was facing something beyond his comprehension. The transmissions his ship received were alarming, distorted noises, followed by a single repeating phrase: "We are here. We have always been." The distortions in the radio signals and magnetic anomalies were mysterious, but Darius's engineers could not explain them. The sound was a veiled threat, something deep and primal. Even so, the orders were clear. Darius needed to descend to the surface with his team and investigate the disturbances in the mines. Human lives were at stake, and the extraction of Xilium was essential for the stability of several galactic regions. However, Darius was not the only one destined to face what Zethor 9 was hiding. In the mining sector, young miners, Elias and Mira, united by a deep romantic bond, were trying to build a better life. They had come to Zethor with the hope of finding fortune, but each day in the mines brought them closer to something sinister. Mira, a brilliant and practical engineer, mastered technology with skill. Elias, more calm and introspective, had an instinctive ability to detect patterns in the soil and locate Xilium. They were an efficient team, but even the strength of their bond was beginning to falter in the face of the unknown. In recent weeks, the Zethor 9 mines had been plagued by strange accidents. Workers disappeared in inexplicable collapses or were dragged away by invisible forces. Elias and Mira lost friends, and at night, in their quarters, they heard voices, indistinct whispers that seemed to emerge from the planet's depths. That morning, Elias and Mira were ordered to explore a newly opened sector deep within the main mine. "More Xilium," their supervisors said. "Nothing to worry about." However, as soon as they crossed the tunnel, Mira's detectors began to fail. The atmosphere grew heavy, and the whispers returned, stronger than ever. "Elias, something's wrong," Mira whispered, trying to understand what was happening. The air seemed to vibrate, as if an invisible force surrounded them. Elias hesitated, looking into the dark abyss ahead. Instinct told him to turn back, but something inexplicable drew him deeper into the cave. Curiosity, and the fear of missing an important discovery, pushed him forward. Meanwhile, on the surface, Darius and his team were approaching the operations base. Serena Vale, an archaeologist specializing in ancient civilizations, had been called in to investigate Zethor's ruins. Serena had discovered inscriptions in caves that spoke of a weapon capable of devouring stars. The evidence suggested that Zethor 9 was a prison built to contain this threat. But the Conclave and the corporations funding the operation ignored the warnings. All that mattered was Xilium, not forgotten myths. Deep within the cave, Elias and Mira entered a vast chamber. The place was illuminated by a faint green light that seemed to emanate from the ground. The air was thick, charged with a palpable energy. In the center of the chamber, a metallic and organic structure emerged from the earth, covered in ancient runes that pulsed like a sinister heartbeat. "What the hell is that?" Elias whispered, his voice trembling. Before Mira could respond, the The ground began to tremble. The structure started to move, and the runes glowed intensely. Something had been awakened. On the surface, Darius received an alert about the mine collapse. His team prepared for an evacuation, but Serena already knew it was too late. "We opened the door," she muttered, staring at the monitor readings in terror. "Now it will come out." As the rescue team prepared to descend, the planet began to destabilize. The mine collapse was only the beginning. Waves of energy from underground started to disable communication systems and weapons. The automatic defenses of the facilities failed, and the transport ships were rendered useless by an increasing magnetic field. Darius led the rescue mission personally, but when they reached the depths, they found something far beyond their worst expectations. The ground was cracked in multiple directions, and indistinct shapes moved in the shadows. Soldiers screamed before disappearing into the darkness, taken by invisible forces. In the center of the chamber, Elias and Mira watched in horror as the entity began to materialize. The air around them distorted, as if the very fabric of reality was being torn apart. Mira desperately tried to activate her communicator, but only heard static. Darius and his team reached the chamber and were met with a scene of despair. The soldiers, disoriented, were shooting at shadows they couldn't see. The entity wasn't corporeal, nor pure energy. It was a dark force feeding on light, life, and fear. Serena, standing beside Darius, shouted for the soldiers to retreat, but confusion had taken over. Every shot seemed to feed the entity, which grew stronger by the second. Amid the chaos, Elias and Mira found an exit. Elias carried Mira, who had been injured by an energy blast. They ran toward the rescue team as the shadows pursued them. Darius, seeing the couple, ordered covering fire, coordinating shots against the forms chasing them. The bullets cut through the air, but many passed through the shadows without effect. Panic grew among the soldiers. However, thanks to Darius's leadership, Elias and Mira managed to escape the chamber and return to the surface. When they emerged, Darius understood the scale of the disaster. More than half his team was gone, and whatever they had unleashed was now spreading across the planet. The siege had begun. Darius, Serena, Elias, Mira, and the few remaining soldiers took refuge in an ancient Va'ark fortress, a bastion with energy defenses that could hold back the entity for a while. There they began to formulate a plan to stop the dark force. However, Novor, the reptilian Va'ark commander, had succumbed to madness. He betrayed his own team, allowing the shadows to invade the fortress. The entity whispered promises of power into his mind, and Novor believed he could control it. Darius suspected that Novor was no longer in control of his faculties. Novor's eyes seemed distant, focused on something beyond reality. No one knew what was happening inside his mind until one suffocating night, the energy defense systems failed. The shadows advanced quickly. Novor had deactivated the defenses in an act of betrayal, believing the entity would reward him with absolute power. Darius led the last remaining soldiers in a desperate defense, while Serena worked frantically to reactivate the Va'ark technology. The chaos was overwhelming. Soldiers screamed as they were swallowed by the shadows, and the fortress halls filled with oppressive energy. Elias and Mira fought alongside the few survivors, their weapons firing uselessly into the darkness. Each bullet seemed to pass through the ethereal forms, as if nothing could hurt them. Meanwhile, Serena raced against time. The ancient Va'ark technology was complex, and activating it required a deep knowledge of energy mechanisms that she barely understood. She felt the shadows growing closer, the whispers invading her mind, trying to destabilize her. "Serena, hurry!" Darius shouted, his voice muffled by gunfire and agonized screams echoing through the fortress walls. In the midst of the turmoil, Envor, now completely consumed by the entity, appeared in front of Darius. His eyes were empty, devoid of any trace of humanity or of his original race. He wielded a Vark weapon, but not with the intent to fight. "The future belongs to darkness," he muttered with a disturbing smile. "You cannot stop the inevitable." Darius, without hesitation, fired. Navor fell to the ground, but not before releasing a final chilling laugh that echoed throughout the fortress. The shadow within him seemed to find another way to survive, slipping from Navor's lifeless body into the surrounding darkness. Finally, Serena managed to activate the fortress's energy core, restoring the defenses. An energy field rose, temporarily blocking the entity and its minions. However, everyone knew it wouldn't last long. With the defenses restored, the group had a brief moment of respite, but Darius knew it was only a temporary truce. The entity was feeding off the planet and growing in strength. Soon the defenses would fail again, and then there would be no way to stop it. That's when Serena revealed her final discovery. The Vark technology, like the structure Elias and Mira had found in the depths, wasn't just a weapon. It was a prison. The only way to permanently contain the entity was to channel an immense amount of vital energy to seal the creature back into the depths from where it had emerged. "Someone needs to make the sacrifice," Serena said, her face heavy with sorrow. "The only thing that can fuel the seal is life." Without hesitation, Darius made the decision. He knew that his death would be the only way to save what was left of his team and the planet. He approached Serena, Elias, and Mira, his face marked by battle and exhaustion. "This isn't goodbye," Darius said with surprising calm. "Just make it count." Before they could argue, Darius stepped into the fortress's convergence core, and with one final effort, channeled his own life to fuel the seal. The explosion of light was overwhelming, engulfing the planet in a wave of energy that echoed through the underground. The entity, for a brief moment, screamed, a distorted sound that made the air vibrate, before being completely contained in the depths of Zethor 9. When the light dissipated, all was silent. Serena, Elias, and Mira emerged from the ruins of the fortress, now in shambles. Darius had vanished. There were no more screams, no more shadows. Zethor 9 was, temporarily, at peace. Serena, exhausted, stared at the planet's rocky horizon. "Did we win?" Elias asked, his face scarred and his eyes full of uncertainty. "For now," Serena replied, her voice filled with deep sadness. "But the seal is fragile. It won't last forever. One day, the hunger will return." The survivors of Zethor 9 returned to civilization, carrying with them the traumas and scars of their battles. Serena Vale dedicated the remainder of her life to studying the Vark ruins and searching for a definitive solution to the threat posed by Zethor 9. She knew that Darius's sacrifice had bought them time, but she also understood that one day the entity could break the seal again. She wrote countless reports and theses to the Conclave, warning of the importance of protecting Zethor 9. But her alerts were often ignored. The corporations continued to exploit Xilium, putting lives at risk. Greed always seemed to triumph over caution. Elias and Mira, now married, tried to move on. They left mining behind and opened a small workshop on a distant planet where they repaired ships and equipment. But the silence of their nights was never complete. In their minds, the whispers of Zethor 9 still echoed. The memory of the entity and of what they had faced never disappeared. Elias, more introspective than ever, spent hours gazing at the stars, fearing the day the signals would return. He and Mira decided never to have children, knowing the future was uncertain. The terror of what they might unleash haunted them. Mira, on the other hand, became colder and more pragmatic. The wounds she had suffered in the mines, though healed, left deep scars, both physical and emotional. She had become a different woman, hardened by the experience. Years passed since Darius's sacrifice, but the entity remained silent. Serena, now elderly, lived in a small research station near Zethor 9, always vigilant, watching for any sign of a breach in the seal. Her health began to fail, but her fighting spirit remained intact. Then, on a quiet night, while analyzing old energy data from the planet, Serena heard something. Faintly, at the edge of the transmissions, was the same phrase that had haunted Darius at the beginning of it all. "We are here. We have always been." The echo of the shadows still lived. The return was inevitable. Serena, weak but determined, knew the cycle would continue. Zethor 9 would once again become the final battlefield. And so, as the universe continued its march forward, the hunger in the depths of Zethor 9 waited patiently for the right moment to break through the barriers once again. The fight for survival was far from over. As the years passed, the survivors changed. Some hardened, others consumed by fear, but all haunted by the memory of what they had faced. Zethor 9, a planet forgotten in the darkness, still held secrets that could devastate not just its inhabitants, but the entire galaxy. And the final whisper, now known to only a few, echoed, "We are here. We have always been."